Hello and welcome everybody to this week's edition of The View from the Top. We've got an amazing edition of the show for you today. We've got some great guests, we've got some great discussion, and for the first time ever, we're going to go open mic with you. I'm going to tell you more about that in a moment, but we are live on LinkedIn. So what I want you all to do is to tell us who's here. So please can I ask everybody on LinkedIn, just join the conversation, even if it's just a question of saying, hi, I'm from Atlanta or Boston or Nairobi or wherever in the world you are. Let us know. Come and say hello. The only way we know who is here is if you come and tell us. So come and tell us, say who's here, and then we will bring you into the conversation. As I said, we've got an amazing show today. And let me tell you who some of our guests are. As ever, we have Julia Onslow-Cole, and I'll bring Julia in at the moment. But today's really special guest, I'm delighted to say, is Peggy Smith. Now, Peggy will be known to many of you, maybe all of you in the audience here. Peggy started her career at Microsoft, so a bit of a tech bias in her career, and she rose to be head of global mobility at Microsoft. She then, of course, joined ERC, where she was the CEO and president of ERC for many years. Then she left ERC and she joined Shift, a mobility technology company. And then recently she's joined Cap. So welcome to Peggy. Let's see if we can bring Peggy into the show. Peggy, hey, how are you?
Hello. Good morning. How are you? Okay, I guess it's good afternoon for you, right?
It's good afternoon for me, and we've already got comments coming in, which is great.
I love it.
I'll try and pull up some of those comments in a moment, but the comments will be with us shortly. So Peggy, it's brilliant having you here. And tell us a little bit about your new role. Tell us a little bit about Cap.
Yeah, no, I'd be delighted to share a little bit about that. I know enough to be dangerous, which is always kind of an interesting dynamic. I've just been here a little over 2.5 weeks, had the opportunity to really engage on the RMC side. As you noted, I've done the corporate side, I've done the nonprofit side, and then this was an opportunity to see a different side of how we support this great industry we're in. Cap, headquartered just outside of Washington, D.C., largely, a organization that has, done incredibly well. They have, an incredibly strong balance sheet. They're well positioned to sort of move through growth during this COVID environment. And just truthfully asked me to come and join and help, as they call it, future-proof their business, which I think is a great segue into some of the conversation we'll have today about where do we need to future-proof mobility. So I'm excited to sort of explore and see and, maybe be a little bit provocative and disrupt a little.
Cool. And we've got Julia Onslow-Cole joining us too. So Julia, good to have you here. Always good to see you. And we've got comments coming in from all over the world. Let's see if I can just pull some of them up. So hi, Jack. We've got Liz. We've got, just from all over the world, we've got people coming in from. This is great. Thank you all for joining us. Who else is here? I'm sure you know a number of these names. People are coming from all over the world, from California, we've got people from all over. So I know we've got literally hundreds of people on the show at the moment. So it's great to have you here. But let's sort of get into a little bit about the, we'll get onto the debate. We're going to cover some fascinating issues today. But what I want to do really, first of all, actually, is to just tell everybody about some of the other events we've coming up in the future. So, we've got some pretty good events over the next couple of weeks. And let me just tell you a little bit about some of those events that we've got coming up. So next week, sorry, not next week, don't listen to me. Tomorrow, the 4th of June, I'm really excited that we're going to be launching new Benevo. Now, Benevo, believe it or not, is actually 10 years old. It's 10 years old yesterday, which is, really exciting for us. And just I suppose it's a coincidence of timing, to be honest, but we're launching new Benevo tomorrow. And I would really urge everybody to tune in to, I'll say this channel, to LinkedIn Live at this time tomorrow, 4 o'clock UK time, and that's 11 a.m. Eastern. Because we're going to launch a platform, the likes of which I think to be honest, no one's ever seen before. We're launching an end-to-end mobility technology platform that can be implemented within days, perhaps even minutes, not a big implementation, with no upfront cost, no maintenance fees. And it's going to do stuff that I think the industry has never seen before. It's introducing what we're calling automatic functionality. So forms get filled in automatically. You don't have to send the same information to multiple vendors. We're going to gamify global mobility. We're going to make global mobility into a game so people share information. We're going to be providing the social insights that we do so that you get user reviews. Employees get user reviews as part of their mobility experience. And we're also adding client reporting, including an amazing feature called Where Are My Employees? So that at a click of a button, you can know where in the world your assignees are at any point. There's a huge amount of amazing stuff that the team have put together. I'm very proud of them. I'm not going to tell you more about it now, but do make sure you sign up for LinkedIn Live tomorrow, and we'll do a full demo. But what else have we got coming up? That's tomorrow. Next week, and I know we haven't even done this week, first of all, but next week, we've got a really special edition. I think, again, this is a bit of a first. We've got The View from the Top meets the Big Four. Yeah, all of them. We've got a meeting with the Big Four. What we've managed to do is get one speaker from each of the Big Four. So I'll tell you who we've got on next week, and I'm sure you know some of them. We've got Mark Burrows from KPMG. Mark's the global head of the mobility practice at KPMG. We've got Ed Hannibal from Deloitte. Ed is also the chairman of ERC and has been on this show before. I know many of you will know Ed. We've got Claire Hughes from PwC, a director in the PwC global mobility practice. And then we've got Anya Valdik from EY. And Anna is also obviously with a Big Four, but she's got a different role. She's actually in charge for the EMEA region of their own mobility program. So next week, we're really going to drill down with the Big Four on what their perspective is. So do put that into the diary. That's a great event. And then the other event I just wanted to mention is a conference that, in fact, I'm doing, Julia is joining me on that conference too. And this is a conference, this is actually a full-day conference called Leaders in Global Mobility. And we've got some amazing speakers. We've got no less than 17 speakers. And in terms of who the speakers are, well, I can't read them all out, but just to give you an idea, some of the people who are going to be on that call, apart from Julia and myself, we've got Tosin Adden-Rayler from ICVIA, we've got Bianca Budel from MOL Group, we've got Emery Castaneda from Unilever, Holly Creed from Revolut, Claire Fielding from King, Pritam Kerai from Centrica, Peter Knight from Rolls-Royce, Magdalena Maskluza from Coca-Cola, Elif Ozer from Lush, Kate Bajer from Erste, Tom Standring from Hitachi, Punita Suri from Genpact, many more, Shazy Tan from Dyson, Sophie Thiem from Oakham. So we've got many companies there. And if you want to go to that conference, again, if you just go on my LinkedIn, you'll see details of it, or indeed, if you just go on, if you just Google Leaders in Global Mobility, you'll find that conference. And that's a full day conference. That is free to in-house global mobility professionals, and vendors can also attend. And if they go through my LinkedIn profile, there is a discount code there. It's not my conference, I should hasten to add. I'm just chairing and curating that one for a company called Informa, who are running that conference. So that's what we've got coming up. But what we're going to start off with, let me just bring Julia back in onto the screen. I've got you, but I've got Peggy and Julia. You're both there. Great to see you. And we're getting comments. We're getting more comments from all over the place. I'm seeing people coming from, from Baltimore, from Los Angeles, from Vancouver, from Bombay, from Toronto, from Pennsylvania, all over New Delhi. We've got people coming in from all over the world. But I know one thing that people always enjoy hearing are the immigration updates. So we're going to start with you, Julia. If you can give us your global immigration update. And then after that, Peggy and I are going to go open mic. And this will be a bit of a first. We're going to give anybody the opportunity to hop on the stage and to share their thoughts and experiences on subjects we're going to talk about. But Julia, why don't we sort of focus on you now, and you talk us through the issues that you've been seeing.
Thanks, Brian. So starting as always with China, there's just been 5 new cases that have been announced of the virus in China, and no local infection at all. There's a continuing rise in the issuance of work visas, which we talked about last week. And we've seen over the weekend, there were 2 flights arranged from Germany. The first flight had 200 returning work visa holders on it. Unfortunately, one of them had the coronavirus, so unfortunately they're in the 5 new cases. But they then took a second plane from Germany. But there is generally across the world this continuing concern about another wave of infection. And one of the things that is really driving this concern is that many countries have just finished a study of actually how many people have been infected in their country. And to get herd immunity, you would actually need to have about 65% of your population to have had COVID-19. And it was thought that by now a lot of people will have had it. But for example, in the French study, they found that in most of France, only 4.4% of the population had the virus, which rose to about 9 to 10% in Paris, but it's still very low. So because of this, the travel bans around the world are almost all still in place. In China particularly, when I spoke to my colleague Betty Xie in Shanghai, she said that what we're now seeing is more of a national approach to the health and safety rules. So we had been talking about China, and we've been saying there have been a lot of regional approaches. And in particular, we talked about if you were moving from a high area of intense infection, like in Hubei province a few weeks ago, to a lower area of infection, you would have had to have a test just to do that move. And now, as I say, there's hardly any local infections, but the concentration of effort in China is all on the health app. Now, I had lots of questions on LinkedIn last week saying, if I have someone coming back to China and they go to a particular place, do they have to quarantine? And the answer is everybody returning has to quarantine for 14 days. Everybody must download the health app. And if it's green, you can go about your normal business. If it's yellow, you have to re-quarantine. And if it's red, you have to go to hospital. And there's also rules about wearing face masks, although they're slightly relaxed because it's very hot in China, and so it's actually becoming less strict. But this week, there was a very, very big problem for assignees in China, where you have assignees who are married to a Chinese citizen. So if you have one partner who's, for example, US or UK, married to a Chinese citizen, the children have dual nationality. And there's a glitch in the health app which doesn't recognize dual nationality. And what it meant this week was that the schools had reopened for everyone, but these children couldn't go to school because they couldn't download the health app. So the international schools have been working with the Public Security Bureau and the Education Bureau to try and find a way around this, but it's caused an enormous consternation of assignees. And I just wanted to tell you about this, because if you have assignees in China, you should be reaching out to them, because this is causing them a lot of trouble. The other thing to say is we've also had lots of queries, and I had them through LinkedIn as well, about what to do when you had executives who you want to move around, and particularly, you might have managed to get them back into China, but you really need them to have a regional role. And the answer to that is you should very much try to get them a green card in China. And although they were taking 6 months, it's possible to expedite the process. So I would highly recommend that. Moving on from the rest of Asia, I just wanted to say that Thailand and Vietnam have done extremely well with the virus. The numbers are really small. And Bangkok has got this new package that you can spend your 14 days quarantine in utter luxury in Bangkok. So that's quite innovative. So turning to Singapore, there was an announcement this week of a travel bubble arrangement whereby you can fast track your travel between China and Singapore for essential business travel. And there's also air travel bubble between Singapore and New Zealand, and new ones are going to be announced. And we know they're being negotiated with Austria and Singapore, Japan and Singapore, and South Korea and Singapore. So the circuit breaker, which was the lockdown in Singapore, is starting to ease, but the travel ban is still there. And that's the pattern across the region. The travel bans are there, the lockdowns are easing. So now turning to the Middle East, and I wanted to thank Haider Hussein, my partner, for giving me this Middle East update this morning. In Dubai, you can now, there's 100% return back to the office, and Emirates have started opening all of the bookings, including for Europe. But again, there's the travel ban in place, which we're hoping some good news might come on that later this month. And Saudi is expecting to go back to normal around the 21st of June. So just a couple of other points. In the UK, the big news this week has been about Hong Kong, about the government have committed to British national overseas passport holders. There's about 350,000 of them, that they will remove the sort of 6 months limit that they had to come to the UK. They will change it to a sort of 12-month period, which can be renewed and go on a path to citizenship. And there's 2.3 million other people who are entitled to B&O passports. So, I mean, the announcements have been encouraging, but obviously there's nothing completely firmed up about, you know, the 3 million altogether. So, but they have been very encouraging. Turning to the EU, the entry ban will be lifted in the EU on the 15th of June. But as I said last week...
sorry, there's a question for you coming up here, Julia. How will the new Chinese security law affect Hong Kong?
Oh, gosh, I think that's above my pay grade, actually. That's a really difficult question. I mean, I think that there is a lot to be seen, but I mean, you know, obviously it's affecting a lot of things in Hong Kong. I used to actually live in Hong Kong. I was an assignee in Hong Kong myself, and I was actually involved in the legislation at the time for the B&O passports. And I have seen, you know, changes over the years in Hong Kong, and obviously I think it's, you know, we'll have to wait and see. I think no one quite knows at this stage.
Okay, so I interrupted, isn't it? Where in the world were you next?
The EU,
Right.
EU. So just to say that there are many travel arrangements, and we talked about this before, lots of travel bubble arrangements. We said we're really quite against the EU project. Some of the travel bubble arrangements, you only have to quarantine for 48 hours. Others allow passages to designated areas. France now allows all EU posted workers to enter France, which is really good, but it is really complicated, and you know, you should really look at all of the regulations together. And finally, I was just going to say on the US, we're still waiting for the proclamation. I think when that comes, we need to devote a bit of time to talking about it, because everybody is very anxious about it. What President Trump's going to do on non-immigrant visas. But also I just wanted to mention there has been a positive thing of a resumption of premium processing. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much. We're now going to do something. Let me just bring everybody else in here. There we go. Hi, right. I've got you all. We're now going to do something that I think we've never done before, and I think this may actually be a first in global mobility. And Peggy, this was your idea. You suggested it to me. So
why are you blaming me? We're just getting started.
You're going to take the credit if it goes well, and if it doesn't, then it's probably going to be down to me. Although I'll try and blame StreamYard for their technology. But I'll tell you how it's going to work, guys. This is going to be hopefully a load of fun. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to throw open the stage to anybody out there. So we're going to post this link in the comments box. But the other way of dealing with it is please just get your camera out, take a photo of this screen so you can actually see the link. It'll be in the link box as well, but that might be another way of doing it. And all you have to do, if you want to come on stage and join us, live streaming out to hundreds of people around the world, then just come on the link. If you come on the link, then you will be backstage. And it's a bit like going onto a radio phone in. You will be backstage, and then we will bring you in as and when we can into the conversation. So if you feel like joining in the conversation, you've got a perspective you want to share, please don't be shy. We want to hear from you. Then do, as I said, come on board and join in the conversation live. So that's going to be a load of fun. All you have to do is use that rather clunky link that's there. As I said, we're going to be posting that live on LinkedIn too. And then you just come on board and ask your questions, share your views. I would say that if you do come on board, just a word to the wise, when you come on board and you're live on air, if you've got another device, please do turn the sound down. Otherwise, we're going to have terrible feedback. But before we get started, and you've got this opportunity to hop on our virtual stage, let me just set that up as a ticker there so you can all see it. There, that's coming as a, where are we doing? That should be coming as a ticker there. Okay, so that's the link that you're going to want to use if you come onto the stage. But before that, yesterday I did a poll on LinkedIn, and the question I asked, and let's get this into the first bit of the debate we have as a group. The question I asked was this: how long will COVID-19 impact global mobility? Now, I don't know what your views are. And I'll ask our guests first, and then I'll tell you what the answers were. The question was, how long will COVID-19 impact global mobility? And the choices were fairly short term. It's going to be maybe, less than a year is going to be the impact on global mobility. The second choice was it's going to be 1 to 2 years. The third choice is it's going to be 3 to 5 years. And the fourth choice is actually COVID-19 is going to impact global mobility forever. So that's the question. I'd ask the audience just to tell us what they think. What does the audience think? How long do you think COVID-19 is going to impact global mobility? But let me start off with our guests, Peggy and Julia. What do you think? How long is COVID-19 going to impact global mobility?
Julia, you want to take the first bat?
I think fairly short term, less than a year.
Okay. And whereabouts are you on the spectrum, Peggy?
Well, so I'm going to answer that question, but first I do want to give a shout out to Matthew Chick for putting the link in LinkedIn. So easy access to get backstage. So you need somebody like that on your team. Let me just tell you that, Brian. So
good man. He's my producer. So
yeah.
Matt, shout out to Matthew Cheek. And yes, so it's there now on LinkedIn. So all you have to do is click on that link, and hopefully Matt will sort of put that out a couple of times during our hour on air so that it gets lost. And someone's coming on board already. Right, I can see we've got Rob Lesser sitting backstage, who's about to join us. But let me just tell you you tell us your thoughts, Peggy, and then I'll tell you the answers from the audience, and then we'll bring Rob on too.
Yeah. So you know what, I will. And let me first say to Brian, one, I'm honored and delighted to be here. But secondly, just seeing all these names, it makes my heart long to be out in the field and see people. I mean, this was a time of period, January through May, that I was in a different place around the world every week. And so, I miss our friends. I miss giving those hugs. And, so it's great to see people like Becky Woods, Tom Brune, Carpe, everybody, Alper Lopez from Dubai. It's just wonderful to see them and to know that we're able to stay connected during an otherwise crazy time. All right, you asked me the answer to the question. And as I've seen in some of the responses here, I'm going to tell you my perspective is forever. But I don't think forever is negative. And I think that's an important distinction. I think it's just going to be different. And we are, out of adversity is a mother of an invention. And I think it's incumbent upon us to bring forth that invention at this period in time. So I don't feel like forever is a death sentence. I feel like forever is a rebirth of a different global mobility. So that's my perspective. But let's bring up somebody from backstage.
Okay, let's do that. And before I do, I'll just tell you what we had 250. Actually, I'll bring Rob Lesser onto stage too as we do it. Hey, we got you there, Rob. Hey.
Hello. How are you?
Yeah, good to see you, Rob. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And so let me just tell you, we went out live. We had 250 respondents to the LinkedIn poll. And the question, as I said, was, how long will COVID-19 impact global mobility? And 17% said short term, which I think is where Julia is. 47%, obviously the biggest number, said it'll be a 1 to 2 year impact. 11% said it was 3 to 5. And then 25%, which I suppose is the second biggest, said forever. And looking at some of the comments that came in, I see Yuki Watanabe, I think she said forever. I'm just looking at the comments that have come in on. She also says, miss you, Peggy. But
I miss her too.
I miss you from you. And I'll pull out some of the comments whilst we're talking. But Rob, what's your view? You've just sort of surprised us and you come up on stage, and that's what we want. So please, other people, if you want to join us on stage, then feel free. There's a limit how many people we can have on stage at any one time, but we can take more than we've got. So there's a couple of lines free if you want to come on board. Rob, what do you think? What do you think is going to happen to global mobility as a result of COVID? How long do you think the impact is going to be?
So I think I'm happy to be able to say that I think the answer is everyone is right. So there are certain things. There are certain things that will be changed in the short term, certain things that will be changed in the medium term, and certain things that will be changed permanently. So, for instance, I don't think for the most part we ever envisioned the practical answer being that there would be virtual foreign assignments. And I think those are coming and here to stay. That's not going to change. So by definition, there will be some reduction in what would otherwise have been the number of moves that were going to happen, because we will do some international moves now that will be virtual. So that's the permanent aspect. And I think I see Peggy sort of shaking her head yes, and I think that's probably one of the things she might have been referring to. And they're not going to go away, that we're going to have that. We will still have others as well. The short term is going to be impacted, I think, because travel is going to be significantly reduced for the near term. And by near term, I mean probably at least a year, if not 2. I think after that, it will move. And as Julia well knows, we're getting lots of restrictions from various countries who are now looking not so much maybe COVID related, but downturn related at protecting their own people and therefore limiting jobs. So whereas in the United States, and I suspect it's true of others, we had a shortage of workers up until 3 months ago, and we will now have an excess of workers for the foreseeable future. That may only be 2 to 3 or 4 years, something like that. And that will impact how much people will need to go external to get workers. And so that'll be reduced for the I would say, call it the medium term. So I don't know if that gives you a little flavor of what I was thinking. There's a lot more individual details, but I think that's the picture what we can expect.
Okay, and we've got somebody else coming on board. So I'm just going to move somebody backstage for a bit because there's a limit how many people I can get on screen. So we're going to say goodbye to you for a moment, Julia.
Sure.
And you stay with us, Rob, for a moment. I'm just going to bring in who we've got Gasharan, who's on mute. But can you hear us, Gasharan?
Oh yes, I can.
Excellent. Hi, welcome. You're live on LinkedIn, Global Mobility's first ever TV station. Let me feed in some of the comments that we've been getting from the audience too. I'd be interested in your views. So I'll feed in here. What have we got? I completely agree with Peggy. Okay, so that's another one in the forever camp. And here's another one. Hang on, it's coming. No, I can't. I can't get rid of that one. Let me just try, and it has frozen. So Angela, you're with us for a while. I can't get rid of you for the moment. And anyway. So let's bring in. Whilst I sort that out, this is the wonders of modern technology. We'll try Gasharan. Gasharan, give us your views for the moment.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm privileged to be on the very first edition, as you say, of the live. So just touching up on that, I think personally it's a combination of various things. I'd like to say short term, I'd like to say forever, but also looking at it's very industry sector specific. So who's ready to come in quite quickly to serve the relevant sectors. And also, maybe one for Peggy is, as the Chief Strategy Officer, would you be looking at things like a policy suite, to have something, flexible policies, looking at customization and individualization of packages as well to that extent. So that's, those kind of things is what we're looking for, because I keep on saying, agility. So how best can we just look at all those things and be agile and move with how things are, rather than waiting for a trend to come to us?
Yeah. Yeah, you know what, Gusharan, I think excellent points. I guess it was maybe close to 12 or 15 months ago, Harvard Business Review came out with a topic on agile HR. And so I think from a workforce perspective and a workplace and a worker perspective, we already headed into the land of flexibility. And so I think that it will be incumbent upon us to get creative within that. And absolutely, I agree with your comment. I think that organizations, right now, there's an intense focus on how do we return to work? Where is the liability? How can we ensure a safe environment? How do we get back collaboration? Digital is nice, but does it replace in person? All those sort of dynamics. But right behind that, I think, is exactly what you're going to be hearing a lot about, which has to do with the flexible employment models, the flexible workforce environments, and therefore mobility will have to be flexible in terms of its policy and underneath it in terms of its choice. So I 100% agree with you. And the companies that are able to lead that charge in their approach to employment models, I think will come out of this ahead, or certainly come out with the top talent, given that we are sitting at, high teens, mid-teen unemployment rates, at least in the US and as you know, as well globally.
Perfect.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Gusharan?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, well, we're going to remove you from the stream and bring Julia back, but thanks for being on the show. So we'll remove you and we'll bring Julia back. Hey, we've got you back. So everybody, let me just see if I can look at other comments here. Here's a comment. It's come up as private, but actually on LinkedIn, I think it says it's Sandra Corona who said this. And she said, a crisis takes 5 years in the making from start to peak to recovery, which is 2 years to shake our economy and layoffs, then 1 year to scavenger hunt for a job, another year to make the move to the right job, and then the last year of amazing projects. So, I mean, that's an interesting take. Let me ask you this question whilst I've got you guys here. We've said this is going to impact mobility, and we've got different views. But the next question is it going to impact mobility for better or for worse? I mean, what are the positives that we think are going to come out of this?
Rob, you're our guest. Hit the microphone.
Well, again, consistent with what I was saying, because volume will be at least somewhat less, I think that would probably have a negative impact in terms of size. But in terms of the need for people to do mobility well, I think that's still going to be there. It'll probably be more important because people are concerned with their employees and people are expecting things to go well. And so that will continue. And I think, the better players and the bigger players probably will be fine over time, although there will be some reduced volume. And so that'll mean that there'll be some shakeout and consolidation in the industry, which is probably overdue anyway. Sorry to anybody who didn't like that answer.
Okay, no, great answer. I mean, I think we can get on to consolidation in a bit. What I am going to do at this stage, Rob, if you don't mind, is say goodbye to you and bring on our next guest. So, Rob, it's been a pleasure having you on the show, and we're going to bring on Mary-Anthony Ewington, from Academy. So
Thank
good to see you, Rob.
Hi, Rob.
And let's bring in Miri. Hey, Miri.
Hi there, Brian.
Welcome to Mobility TV.
Hi, Peggy. Hi, Julia. Nice to see you.
How are you?
Okay, so do you want to sort of ask your question or share your perspective?
Well, I was just going to say that from what we've seen from our members, I certainly agree with Rob's comment on virtual assignments. We're getting that. A number of members wanting to know how to sort of put the policy together. So I think that's definitely, we're going to see virtual assignments. I think it's going to differ between industry. So I think companies like the tech industry, they'll certainly be leading the way with some virtual assignments. I think the traditional industries, perhaps oil and gas, construction, I think perhaps they may go to business as usual a bit quicker. And I think in terms of your comment about whether it'll make global mobility better, I absolutely think it definitely will make global mobility better. it's been a really good chance for our members to put all the issues under the spotlight. Global mobility have been dragged into so many things, from business travellers to even just international new hires. The skills and expertise that global mobility have really come under the spotlight. So I think it can only be a good thing.
Okay, let me bring in another comment that we've got from the audience. And this is from Robert Church. And he says, I'll always agree with Rob Lesser. So Rob, if you're still listening, there you go. This change is going to evolve into a balance between saving local jobs and getting global talent for your businesses. I expect immigration regulation to keep changing and get tilted towards commuter and against long-term or permanent transfers. So I don't know what, Julia, you think about that. I mean, he specifically addressed immigration there.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really interesting perspective, Robert. I mean, I think that like Mirianthi said, that this is a real chance for global mobility to step up, look at all different policies, to use more technology, to push down the transactional work and really spend time looking at the strategic work. And one of the things that we have to remember is that, yes, you know, governments around the world are really going to be worried about protecting their resident labour force, but also they all want inward investment. And that does create an opportunity for us to vocalise for different strategies and better strategies and even better immigration strategies. So I think that there's, you know, if you actually use more technology, made the transactional work, you know, to sort of took that away and really concentrated on the strategy, a lot of amazing things could be achieved globally to make things a much better landscape for global mobility.
If I may just add something, as we had an update from the Permits Foundation. Jill Gordon gave us an update earlier this week, and she said it was fascinating how this is a real opportunity to drive some of the agenda items that they're hoping to gain for dual careers. So, yeah, I think you're right, Julia. There's, again, it'll be a fantastic time to accelerate some of the things that we've wanted to accelerate in the industry for a long time.
Yeah, I'm on the board of the Permit Foundation, and actually, yeah, and that's exactly one of the top things I was thinking of, exactly, changes in Asia for making it better for partners. So you can have diverse, you know, assignments, and, you know, definitely would improve things. Yeah.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for being on the show, Miri. We'll have to say
it was great to join you.
We have Priyam waiting in the wings. So we'll say goodbye to Miri and we'll bring on Priyam.
Bye.
So now we're going to add in Priyam. I'm not sure which company you're with.
I work with Helma International.
Cool. Okay. And what do you want to ask or share your perspective on?
But I think we should first perhaps put a prefix to Julia's name and put Guru Julia Onslow-Cole, because she has been there. Really, I think hand-holding and guiding and giving us updates from the immigration world, like a rap artist going from east to west and sometimes from west to east, and it's quite fantastic. In terms of what changes, you know, about your LinkedIn poll, I just wanted to add, perhaps we break up mobility in 4 parts, and my personal view is that relocation and taxation are probably going to see a lot of change between work from home and the relocation, which might go part virtual, but perhaps the immigration bit and the payroll bit are likely to stay more or less the same. Except some countries, I know that in Africa and perhaps Philippines as well, they're going online. I don't know, Julia or Peggy, if European countries applications are going online, but I'll let you answer on that.
Yeah, I mean,
Julia, I can take that.
Yeah, we're seeing, I mean, what's happening. Thank you so much. I'll pay you later for that very nice introduction. But what we're seeing is that those countries that don't have online applications, they're really suffered. And so all governments around the world, I think this is a real incentive to move applications online. So I think that's really true. I also agree with you that there's going to have to be, you know, much more regulation around tax, payroll, immigration to achieve, proper virtual assignments.
Oh, thank you so much, Julia, and thank you, Brian. Really a privilege to be on your show.
Well, it's great to have you here, Priyam. You can stay on the show for a moment, and see. I'm going to put up some of the comments. If anybody else out there would like to hop on the stage, then do. But let me just give you some more comments. Here's one. This is quite provocative. Assignments for a company's progress, not for an employee's free ticket to the world. And that's the answer for virtual assignment deniers. So what are we thinking about that then? I mean, assignments are only for a company's progress, they're not an employee's free ticket to the world. And maybe actually what companies should be doing is more virtual assignments and less moving people around.
I'll throw out a perspective, and Priyam, invite yours as well after. Right now we're seeing sort of this explosion, if you will, of what like virtual internships, right? So you could assert that these are virtual short-term assignments. I think the effectiveness of these have yet to be measured. That's going to come at the end of the summertime. So we're going to say, hey, was that effective? Did that work? What did we learn? What should we have done differently? The second piece, I think, too, that, I don't know if there was a benchmark and then a post follow-up here, but, for those people that got thrust into the virtual work environment, sort of unprepared or unplanned, we were not only thrust into that virtual work environment, but we were thrust into it at a time where we couldn't go outside, right? You couldn't go to meet your buddies, you couldn't go meet your friends. And so I think there was a very natural or unnatural increase in productivity, because what else were we going to do? I mean, we're going to work, right? But when the opportunity for socializing opens up, and as it's slowly beginning to do, you might see a more normalization of the productivity in a virtual environment. And I think as we look at, some virtual assignments and those kinds of things, what gets missed when you cross a border is understanding the culture. So in my opinion, until virtual reality, AI, AR, whatever it is, can transcend cultural learnings, it's going to have its limitations and in terms of virtual. Now, I'm all for remote, I'm all for flexibility. I think extremes on either end will be limiting, because you'll be sacrificing the ability to get deep, rich learning at maybe a cost point, because you don't want to spend the money. But I'm not sure that you'll be able to really move yourself in the way you would have hoped had you had that rich in-person experience and understanding that culture.
Okay, so thank you so much, Priyam. Thank you for being on the show. We really appreciate having you here. But I'm going to remove you from the stream now. So, but anyway, it's been great having you on the show. So I'm just going to take you out.
Hi, Priyam.
And if anybody else would like to join in, please do come and join us. I know a lot of people are putting in some. There's a pretty extensive conversation going on in LinkedIn in the comments box, which we can see, and we can pull up some of the comments. Some of the comments are actually a bit long to put on screen, but for those people, I can see. Oh, who's put some interesting comments in there? I can see Des McKell has, Jeremy Chanda, Rohini Ramya, Stephen McCarry. I mean, there's loads of really big comments, big thoughtful comments coming through here. If you're one of those and you'd like to come on stage, then again, just press on the link. The link is in the comments box, and Matt will put it up again shortly there, or else you can just take a picture on screen from this ticker thing and then type that in. Come on screen and join us. But what I want to do is actually move the conversation on now. We've talked about how global mobility has been impacted by coronavirus, and clearly, whilst it may be positive in the longer terms in terms of some of the changes that might be coming down, there's also been quite a lot of negative stuff happening. Obviously assignment numbers are very, very substantially down. Business traveler numbers are even further down. But I don't want to sort of heap bad on bad, but what I want to do now is say, well, what about climate change? Is that going to be a whole further level of impact on global mobility that frankly we haven't even started to think of yet? So, I mean, audience members, please, jump on our stage. We love hearing from you. Touch wood, it's worked pretty well so far. So I'm delighted with the technology, and I'm thanking Peggy for encouraging me to be bold. Peggy told me at Microsoft the line was you have to eat your own dog food, and that everybody at Microsoft got to sort of test Microsoft products first before everybody else. So, you know, we're doing that, you know, we're testing our technology here out live. But anyway, I'd be interested in the audience views, but let me just start off with you, Peggy. What's your view on climate change and how that, you know, in the immediate, medium, long term is going to impact global mobility?
Well, you know, I think there's a couple lenses with this. I'd say first and foremost, you know, climate change. We lost our host. This we could have a lot of fun now with the audience. Now,
no, I'm here. I've just focused the camera on you.
Oh no, I don't need that. Anyway, but so you know what? One, I think the youth. This is an issue for the youth, so it's not going to go away. So let's just sort of start that. You know, they're looking at the earth that they want to live in, and then they want to leave to their children, grandchildren. Do I think it's going to impact global mobility to the extent that that extended business travelers are a natural extension of a global mobility suite of benefits? Then that answer is likely yes. And again, I don't know that I think it's going to affect negatively. I think there's an awareness factor. And so, you know, if you look at, you know, what airlines are trying to do to reduce their carbon footprint, if you look at what companies are now saying they're going to do to reduce their carbon footprint. You know, I look at this like it will, but I think it will in a so much as it's going to affect everything. And I don't think it's a negative thing for global mobility. I don't believe that people will say we're going to move less because our carbon footprint this month exceeds what our goal was. I think there will be efficiencies and technologies that come out in management of the global carbon that is expressed out there that will say, okay, now we can do this, but it's going to be in a more effective and a more efficient sort of manner. And everybody, every citizen, all nearly 7 billion of us will have a responsibility to this. And so, you know, I'm a silver linings gal. This isn't going to affect us, you know, negatively. This is a great opportunity. Yeah, like what Mark O'Reilly posted.
Yeah, well, yeah. So Mark O'Reilly, if you want to join us on stage, Mark, just click on the link and coming in. But Mark's saying climate change is an interesting one, especially when you think not of airline travel, but global food and other supply chains where the bigger CO2 emissions are. So, you know, how big an issue is that going to be for us over the next few years?
Yeah,
I think it'll be a really big issue.
Yeah, I mean,
there's certainly going to be a lot of discussion around it. And you know, as we've seen, I don't know if they're reporting on your side of the pond, Brian, but here in the States, as you know, industries sort of shut down for COVID, there's already been early reports out around the amount of reduction of CO2 in the air just in, you know, a 60-day window. And so I think there will be the opportunity to capitalize around that. So, you know, great conversation. And, you know, I think it's an excellent point that Mark raised.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think I read that CO2 emissions globally were down about 18% or something. That might have been a few weeks ago when, you know, the lockdown was at its strongest. I mean, I don't know where it is where you are, but where I am, I've certainly noticed a lot more traffic on the roads than there was, you know, even 10 days, two weeks ago. So it seems to be coming back. I mean, here I'd put up some other comments. No humans on the streets has done wonders to our beautiful climate. Summer in Saudi Arabia starts since March. We're in June now, and the heat just started 2 weeks ago. And I mean, we're getting some interesting questions. I mean, here's another. I mean, the world is changing. I mean, there's no doubt about it. That I think it's fair to say that all three of us grew up in a generation where globalization was probably a good thing, and globalization was inevitable. Globalization was just it's the way it happened. It always had happened that there was going to be more globalization. But going back, you know, maybe even 20, 30 years, there's been, you know, an increasing sort of anti-globalization, movement, and whether that's been populism or nationalism or, you know, various things that have been going on. It's all been about actually, well, maybe we don't want too much globalization. And, you know, and the other thing, of course, that stops globalization is disruption. I mean, here's an interesting comment from Bindu. I would add social unrest to the list of factors that would impact global mobility, given what is going on around the world now. You know, I think this whole question of social unrest, in fact, I would add in the whole question of shortened supply chains as well. We're getting some feedback somewhere. Hopefully that will go. But but shorten supply chains as well as people become more dependent or want to become less dependent on overseas and more dependent on their own supply chains. But I mean, do you think social unrest is a factor that's going to impact global mobility now, or is that we're not quite there yet? Great question, Bindu.
Yeah, Bindu, probably the one that a lot of people are sitting and thinking about. I'm greatly heartened by what I see and the great compassion and empathy that's being shown globally right now around a very troubling cause. And it's not a political statement, but I think what we're seeing on TV is probably what we have always done and understood in mobility. We're constantly challenging ourselves to be empathetic to the family that we're moving, whose lives we're disrupting, to the fear that they might have crossing a border with a small child and wanting to go, wow, am I going to get a good destination, settling in experience? Will the schools meet my needs? And so I think these causes that we're seeing are a representation of the globalization, Brian, that you spoke about. And, there's not, from a corporate responsibility perspective, we're in an enviable position in mobility because A, we're global, B, we understand compassion and empathy at a really deep level that maybe other parts of the business don't quite understand. Because, and I love HR, look, we're a subset of HR, but HR largely serves the employees. We serve the families. That's an extension, and that's what you're seeing on the television is these families. And so, I'm greatly heartened by it because I think we've got the skills to be an ambassador with this. But I don't know, Julia, you bring in the compliance lens for me.
No, I think Bindu's comments and all these comments are really interesting. Just going back on climate change, I think climate change is regarded by a lot of businesses as the big issue alongside of remobilization. I think you'll see a lot of investors saying they won't invest unless companies, have the right climate change policies. People obviously rightly really care passionately about it. And even airlines are talking about using this downtime to actually get rid of less efficient planes, and they've got really super climate change, programs. And then you're seeing insurance companies being really worried about insurance. So I think climate change is a really, really big issue. And there was a lovely saying in an article I read about globalization recently, which said globalization has probably gone for a little snooze, but it will come back. So I think it's something that will come back.
Yeah, and I think agreeing with you there, Julia, is Jeremy Chander and saying, in 30 years of doing this, I've moved people in and out of war zones and high-risk territories. Global mobility changes quickly based on local needs, and people will continue to move. Great comment, Jeremy. I don't know, Peggy, if you've got views on that.
I think Jeremy nailed it right there. We're highly adaptable. And, we're able to do this. I'll harken back to my time at Microsoft. At the very last bit of my time at Microsoft, there was the volcano in Iceland. And then right on the backs of that was the Arab Spring Rising. And who got called in, even Hurricane Katrina in 2005 here in the US, who got called in but global mobility. And that's when we began to be pulled upon for responsibility around duty of care. Yes. And what we're really talking about is perhaps a broadening global understanding and redefining of duty of care. And again, I continue to say, who gets called in? We do. And so, as Jeremy noted there, global mobility is able to change quickly based upon those local needs. Yeah. And we're going to get more opportunity to flex that muscle or to grow that muscle.
Yeah. I think that's a really insightful comments, Peggy, but also I think that this COVID-19 has really shown us that a lot of companies don't have fit for purpose crisis management plans, because I was involved a lot in the Arab Spring, and it was all about where do you move people to? Right. But this time you can't have a plan on where you move people to because you couldn't move people anywhere. So I think this is another thing to put on global mobility to-do list, on that endless list we've been talking about, is what are you going to do about your crisis plan, and how are you going to review that?
We've got about well, I might extend it a bit because I think, this, we're having so much fun, but it's meant to be about 6 minutes. We'll probably run on a bit because I think when numbers start dropping off of LinkedIn, I'll know it's time to stop. But we've still got nearly 200 people listening in. Let me just raise this one with you, and I want to actually aim this question at you, Peggy, and thinking really, you're such an industry leader from your ERC days generally, but I'm thinking of your ERC days, and this is this whole question of Carpe Diem, seize the day. We've always said, I think, certainly all my career, people have said, it's a shame that global mobility isn't at the top table. We should be such a strategic function, but actually we end up just being so tactical and just dealing. We tend not to know that someone's moving until it's already been decided. It's and all our job is just to make sure that they get there. But we're never doing anything strategic. We're now in this huge crisis, and we've got all these other crises that we can just see lining up one after the other. We've talked about, obviously we've talked about COVID, but we've talked about sustainability, we've talked about civil unrest, we've talked about war, we've talked about all sorts of things that are going on. So my question is this: how can we make global mobility more strategic? In the words of the ancient philosopher, and if not now, when?
Look, I peel back a little bit of what you said there. First off, and I know you categorize these, Brian, as crises. I categorize them as opportunities.
Good point.
And so, and again, that's my silver lining perspective. But, I just feel like these are tremendous opportunities for those that can be innovative. For the second thing I would say, there's, in addition to Carpe Diem, I love musical theater. I can't do anything about it other than sit and enjoy it. For those that have spent time with me, you'll know I probably see 70 shows a year around the globe.
We are doing global mobility karaoke soon.
No, well, I can't sing.
I'm joking.
But that being said, there's Hamilton, which has made its tour and done some great things. There's a great song in there called "I'm Not Going to Throw Away My Shot" or "Don't Throw Away Your Shot." It's the same thing as Carpe Diem. This is another opportunity for us as mobility professionals to not throw away our shot. And so when we talk about being at that table, I say, let's throw that paradigm away. Why? Because we're stuck. And I think we see the table as a barrier. Let's instead say, you know what, we just want to go have a cup of tea. And once you begin to demonstrate your value of how you understand how duty of care can affect the ability to drive business results, how you can understand how pandemics or virtual environments or whatever it is, and even as Sylvia Ehrlich just put in there, at the table has always been an issue. Let's change it. Let's say, let's go have a cup of tea, because it starts with a dialogue around saying, name another area in your entire business that affects its people, who drive your business results, who have a broader understanding of what's happening globally. That's us. And so I think this presents yet one more opportunity for us to not throw away our shot and to go in, and even in helping in the return to work sort of language that companies are wrestling with. So as you can see, I'm very passionate about this, and we're rich with opportunities, Brian.
And what about this? I mean, I know that there's GMS out there, but what about a university degree in global mobility? Can we then do that and take Priyanvada's point of view and get a real seat at the table, or do you think that's a pipe dream?
You know what? I don't think anything is a pipe dream. And you know what? If we thought that, the Americans wouldn't have put a person on the moon in 1969. You have to put a goal out there and you got to go for it, right? So when I sit there and I think about a university certificate, I'm greatly encouraged, because number one, HR in and of itself as a practice is far more valued in an enterprise than it ever has been. And there are great universities that are putting together HR tracks now and they're recognizing organizational development and psychology, and all those things are exciting. And I'm going to throw a curve at this too, Brian, because I like to do that. We sit here, and right now we're in this global pandemic and whatever it's going to be. Do you know what companies in the US are now heavily recruiting for? Chief medical officers. They are recruiting for medical officers, doctors. Now, just step back for a second. Would you ever have thought that any company would have ever done that? And so it's upon us to say, let's not throw away our shot, dadgummit. Let's take advantage of this opportunity. Let's pull our heads out and let's drive that change. And if it's at the table, who cares? Drive it at the counter getting your cup of tea. Yeah.
We had Rob on the show earlier. Rob was one of our guests, and he's fed this one in. We will only get to the table when we are proactive strategic thinkers rather than excellent operational performers. That takes new skills and career risks. In other words, we have to stop being good at our job and start being good at a different job.
You know, maybe we've always been good, but I think what he hits on there, and it's already swung up my screen here, but is around what is your individual personal appetite for risk? That's what you're talking about. Will you take a risk to go have that conversation? And you know what? Great people that innovate great things take great risks. That takes courage. And so, you know, take great risks. There's not a better time. What are they going to do? Fire you because you threw out an idea? Well, then it wasn't the right organization to be in. And so, you know, companies that are able to grab that, and there's great companies in our industry that we serve that have that as part of their DNA. They actually reward that risk. Yeah. So, golly, let's go get it.
I think Robert's absolutely nailed it with what he said, because
I'll bring the comment back up whilst you're saying it. There we go.
Yeah, I think he's nailed it. And for me, in immigration, it's the difference between hearing from the board that they want to move an operation to a certain part of the world and being right on the back end of that and then trying to affect it, or actually going in with the operation at the beginning, looking at the different choices of where they could do it and being part of that strategic conversation about the pros and cons. It's trying to come up with good mobility ideas on immigration and all the different mobility topics to actually get in with the sort of formation of what's happening on the growth agenda, rather than just receiving what's happening and transactionally doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, can I just ask the audience, have you loved this new format, the way of bringing people on screen? It was an experiment for us. So let me know what you thought. Can you just feed into the your comments here? And I think another interesting comment here. I agree with Peggy and with Rob. I think that in order to have the capacity to be strategic, we need to eliminate the admin part of our work, so we don't spend our entire day on operations. And I mean, obviously, I'm with a technology company, and we believe that technology is part of the solution. But I remember somebody saying to me years ago that, we're all there, we're all juggling all these balls in the air, and it's so difficult to keep juggling how do you keep juggling all those balls in the air? And the answer is quite simple. Put some of the balls down and just juggle the ones you can. And maybe what we need to do, and whether that's outsourcing or co-sourcing or using technology, we're pretty much out of time. But I think, Peggy, I can see you're biting to say something. And then,
well, I am. So I'm going to go back to the very beginning. Can you see I'm jumping out of my chair? So I want to applaud you for taking the risk with me. And when you called me and said, would you do this? I said, I'll do it only if we change up the format. Let's disrupt or be disrupted. When you kicked off the show, I didn't want to get criticized for it, but daggone it, look at the comments. They loved it. So
yeah,
I'm going to take credit for that.
Yeah.
But it took a risk, and you as a risk, somebody to open that dialogue to say, yeah, let's try it. That's as simple as a cup of tea. That's what we're talking about. It didn't have to be big. I'm just like, let's try this thing. So you know what? Anyway, thank you, Brian.
Well, thank you. And in fact, someone said, can Peggy be a regular contributor? We will definitely have you back, Peggy. It's been an amazing experiment for us. So, I've loved it. It's been so great seeing so many friends and contacts making comments, and coming on screen. I'd encourage more. Just to say, to finish up, just to remind everybody in terms of what we got over the next week. Tomorrow we've got the launch of the new Benevo. Trust me, you will be blown away by the technology. So please do, whether you're a corporate or service provider, because we're open to anybody, come on board and listen in and see what the technology future is like. I think you'll see some stuff that blows your mind. And then next week we've got the view from the top meets the big four. We've got one person from each of the big four firms. So that will be, pretty interesting. Four heavyweight players from each of the big four coming on board. And then we've got some more good shows coming on down the pipeline. And we've got the big conference on the 23rd of June as well, Leaders in Global Mobility. Anyway, it's been a fabulous hour. I've loved having you on the show, Peggy. As ever, it's been great having you on the show, Julia. And thank you to all our guests who came on board. And you took the chance to, you took the risk of coming on board and being live on Global Mobility Television. It's been a blast. So all I can say really is thank you, everybody, and see you all this time tomorrow, 4 o'clock tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern, 4 o'clock British Summer Time, 11 a.m. Eastern, for the Benevo new product launch. And then again next week for the Meet the Big Four. So thank you, everybody. And on that, I'm going to say goodbye. And thank you to Julia and thank you to Peggy.
Thank you. Be well, be kind. Bye.